Are you wondering if you can live a healthy lifestyle on the road? On today's episode of Driven Too Far, we've got the trucker trainer, Bob Perry, joining us with healthy lifestyle tips. Hello, I'm Andrew Winkler, and this is Driven Too Far, the truth about trucking, a podcast that helps over-the-road truck drivers balance career and family. Our guest today is Bob Perry. Bob is known as the trucker trainer and has spent the last 25 years bringing health and fit lifestyles to CDL drivers. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Hey, thank you very much, Andrew, for having me. I appreciate it.
So I started this podcast last November, and I'm about 40 episodes in, and we've done a lot of episodes on financial health for drivers, trying to get them to make more money with some tips and tricks, but we haven't done much on the physical side of it. So when I thought it was about time to do something on the healthy side, I says, well, gosh, who am I going to get on the show? And first person I thought of was Bob Perry.
Well, it's very kind of you and generous. I appreciate it.
You bet. So let's jump right in here. You know, how important is nutrition and exercise on the road for these drivers?
It's very important, you know, and I know early on in my career working with the drivers was, you know, of course, incorporating fitness workouts in, but it's very difficult. And really the big secret, like it is for any of us, and whether you're a driver or non-driver, it's really 75% of what you put in your mouth. And if you can manage that and get your arms wrapped around it, then, you know, doing some minimal exercise movement, you'll see a difference. And that's really what I try to bring to the drivers. It's really education and getting them to understand the caloric intake. When I first was doing this, I had a team of coaches, and they would take calls, coaching calls, and talk to drivers. I said, please monitor if you can and collect data on what kind of caloric intake we think they're taking in. And it came back, and it was like 400 to 4,500 calories a day, which unfortunately about 50% of that, Andrew, came from liquid drinks, you know, power drinks, sodas, and so forth. So anytime you can get somebody to eliminate a couple thousand for that and so forth through the week, and look at it in that portion size, then getting them to lose a pound or two a week and getting them to 10 pounds is the benchmark. I get them to 10 pounds, then they'll start to see some significant difference on the inside, which for drivers, that's just more important, right? Their blood pressure, their heart rate, sugar, those type of things, so they can stay compliant.
You know, I've just in my own life, you know, I've had times when I've been fit and not so fit and go up and down a little bit like a lot of people do. So I certainly feel the pain. But one of the challenges I've always come across is, where do you find good information on what to do? Because it seems like every time you turn around, you're getting served a new ad on social media. And this guy says, hey, carbs are good. And this one says no carbs. And so where does a driver go to find good info?
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate you bringing that up right away. It is very difficult, just not for drivers, for everybody, right?
Right.
You think you're on the right path, eat egg whites. That's all you need to do. And then sooner or later it comes out and say, well, it doesn't really bother if you got the yolk in there or not, right? And people's heads are spinning. In reality, what happens, that's what gets the average consumer discouraged, right?
Yes.
And they don't know who to believe and who to trust. One of the rules I ask drivers to remember is that we're all different. What works for me may not work for you, Andrew. But what you do have access to is the most valuable and most cost-effective lab that you can have, and that's your own body. And you need to find out what works best for you. You know, and I know there's a lot of talk about intermittent fasting, and you got to have energy in the morning to get you through the day. And that works for a lot of people. A lot of people it doesn't. So the really answer to that question is unfortunately you got to do some research, and I know there's some applications out there that you can go to and some sources that you can do. And that's, in fact, it's one of the things you and I were talking about earlier in my new podcast coming out, is I want to give drivers direction on where they can go, right? And what they can do and how they can find this information out. And I'm also starting to work with a lot of different carriers to provide them, because I have tons and tons of content, material, all those things that I can make available to these companies to give to their drivers, to spoon feed them, that gives them some basic information to make some changes. Because what I find is that for those who can make some baby steps and make some changes, then it creates the thirst and the hunger to learn more, and opens up their mind to thinking that, wow, there's other things I can do out here to even get to better shape.
So if I heard you right, it almost sounds like there's a lot of potential solutions out there, but you really just need to find something that works for you as a person and something you feel like you could stick with.
Absolutely, and what you can work within. And I know there's a lot of My Fitness app is one I know a lot of people go to, but a lot of the applications, they don't fit the driver-centric lifestyle, right?
Yep.
And know that when I've worked with some of the carriers for the corporate side, the insurance company comes in and we got this great app, it's going to help their people with their lifestyle. And the driver logs on, it's got all these beautiful people running down the beach, on the beach, eating spa food. They're going, who's doing this? I don't get to go to the beach.
Who's got time for that, right?
Right. So you try to, bake it down. And what I do is I provide, information to drivers that's realistic, that they can get into a travel center if they go there. Or the big thing that I really work hard on with them, and one of the things I'm working hard on to bring to the industry standard, is we know that when they learn to be a professional driver, they really embed in your brain about the pre-trip check, right? Walk around your truck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get this hanging down. So what I want to make standard in the industry is, while you're doing that, is take one more step and do a pre-trip refrigerator check to see what you have in that refrigerator. Because as you know, in the day and the life of a professional driver, they're going to get stuck. Traffic, weather, breakdown, whatever it is, and they're sitting for 2 hours, and you don't have a good choice to reach for, Andrew, you make a bad one.
Yeah, and they're going to reach for whatever they got there handy, so make sure you stocked it right.
Yeah, and we deserve to give them that piece of education, because it's part of safety, because you can't be safe if you're not well.
That's a great idea. I really like that. So I'm curious about truck stops. When I think a lot of the public think about truck drivers and going into the truck stops, for whatever reason, you think about biscuits and gravy and the buffets. Are those still out there, or have the truck stops evolved too?
They have. And the first one I want to bring up is TA. They've done really a good job. I've worked with them over the years, and they have now collaborated with the Cleveland Clinic, because they're out of Cleveland, obviously. And the Cleveland Clinic is helped them redo their menu in their restaurant to give them better choices to make. Drivers, when they come in, not everybody's going to do it. For those who want to and are willing to, they can do that and get it at a favorable price point. And the other is trying to make it available for the grab and go as well. One of the things, you may know this, that truck drivers unfortunately face is when they go to the truck stop, is the truck stops obviously are there, and a lot of their business is done through petroleum, fuel oil, all those things. But they also do a phenomenal business for the four-wheeler.
Sure.
And so the four-wheeler comes in there, and they want, you look at that's why I always get so frustrated when they start picking on the driver about the condition they're in. And I tell them, listen, I don't drive anymore, but I do have to fly now. When I get on that airplane, I can tell you, there's a large percentage of people on there that could, learn how to eat better, even the pilots. But, so they come in and they want the cinnamon bun, they want all those things. And the poor driver comes in after being on the road for 10 hours, they feel deprived, and they want, they smell the aroma, and before you know it, they're diving in. So doing it, but I work with TA and some of those to basically help give them a roadmap on drivers to find these things easily. And that's why I do advise them to grocery shop before they go out for the week if they can, and make sure they're stocked up.
It's torture. We've got a chain of convenience stores and a truck stop here in central Nebraska that you walk in and it just smacks you in the face as the cinnamon rolls. It's like, oh my gosh, how good does it smell? So I understand what those drivers are facing out there walking into that, and it just kind of sucks you right in.
Well, one of the major big travel centers, and this has been a few years ago, I was actually working with them on a project. And the press release came out and said, where's bells and whistles going on. We just opened our 100th cinnamon bun. They were so excited. And I called them. I said, what are you doing? you contract with me to help give some better tips on how to do it, and now you're fighting me. I can't win against something like Cinnamon Bun, right?
Right. That's right. So you mentioned energy drinks before. I know they're really popular. There's obviously the ones that are full of sugar, and there's some that advertise zero sugar. Is there really a difference?
Well, the difference is that what they're sweetened with. Most of them are use aspartame and things that even the additive sweeteners are not really good for. Once again, I'm speaking for the general population health, the professional drivers that suffer with blood pressure, sugar, and so forth. Any of those type of things that are heavy, non-sugar laden with additives, aspartame, those type of things, do not really work well with the driver. And I know it's tough. What I always suggest to drivers, and once again, they can get this when they pre-grocery shop, is they have different flavors of green tea, blueberry, strawberry, whatever you want, you can imagine. And it has about a third of the caffeine, so you still get a little kick from it. And you take those tea bags and just put it in your cold bottle of water, and let it sit there and it'll dissolve. So it takes away from the boredom of just drinking water, and you get that, and you also get a little bump. And if you're going to have coffee, I mean, we're not going to get away from, I'm way past the days of being naive to the fact that, because I come from a family of drivers, I mean, they're not going to give away the coffee. And so, maybe taking it and put it in ice and it'll dilute a little bit to do it. But the power drinks, this is something I was talking the other day with some folks. And early on, I used to do, when they have the safety checks, right, and safety breaks, and I would work for some of the associations and be there to give drivers tips on how to work out on the road. And I got to talking to the patrolmen, and they said one of the things they do whenever there's a rollover and there's an accident, one of the first things they do, Andrew, is they go up and they look in the cab and they see how many empty cans of energy drinks are on the floorboard. That could be an indication that that driver was fatigued.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep. And
trying to stay awake. So, and I get it. I mean, they're out there, they're popular. They spend so much money on sponsorship and getting in front of the counter. Companies are not going to, walk away. What I tell drivers all the time when I get on the radio, and one of the biggest questions I get asked all the time, undoubtedly, is, Bob, when are you going to get these truck stops to stop serving this crap? And I said, well, here's my tip, my friend. The day you stop buying it, you keep buying it, we're going to keep serving it up to you.
Supply and demand, right? We keep demanding, they'll keep shoveling up. Yep.
You got to ask for it.
You talked about, you touched on it anyway, about the importance of meal prepping and thinking about, as a driver, plan your week out before you leave the house, stop at Walmart before you go back to the truck. It feels like most of the carriers out there are doing a pretty good job anymore of like speccing refrigerators in the trucks. So, things like that definitely help. But if I'm going to meal prep or start meal prepping, if I'm new to that as a driver, where do I start with something like that? What were some of the better things you would hope to see in my refrigerator?
Thank you. So there are I do see more and more videos out there. Some of the drivers are very creative. I mean, they got like a charcoal broiler they're dragging around out, and they really got it going on. But not everybody's going to do that. And it's kind of like when everybody wants to join the gym January 1st, right? And they go for about 30 days and said, gosh, this is too much work. Same way when you start thinking about that. So the ones that are most easiest and most common that I talk about with drivers that they do is they do roll-ups where they can take turkey slices or chicken slices and roll them up like Swiss cheese or their favorite kind of cheese and roll them up and put them in a baggie. So they got those they can kind of munch on. A lot of them will cook out if they are home for the weekend, can roast up some chicken breasts and so forth and have those available and in their refrigerator to have that to eat as dinner. And it's easy enough to pre-cook could be rice, some type of vegetable that you can kick in. Because you're right, most all the units now, because I also work with Freightliner on some of these initiatives, and they all now come with bigger refrigerators. Remember, there used to be those little boxes.
Right. They're
not that big anymore. They got some room to put some product in there, and you can put some Tupperware in there where you can have some veggies and so forth that you've cooked at home and had. And they have also a lot of really neat little instant cookers that you can, even if you don't have it prepped, you can stop at like the Walmart, go in there and get the vegetables, throw them in. It's like, looks like a lunchbox. and plug it in, and voila, in about 45 minutes or so, you've got this, meat, potato, whatever it is that you want to cook in there to do. But the basic stuff is, the roll-ups, the chicken sandwiches, pre-making some tuna salad or chicken salad to have in there, and then you can put on your bread or pita bread, whatever your choice is. And those are the kind of things. And then, of course, making sure that, everybody's going to want something sweet at some point. And so allow yourself some wiggle room whatever your favorite is, but then also try to find something that you're not diving into every day, and have some kind of substitute for some type of sweet. There's a lot of things you can do. Like if you take bananas and before you go on the road and blend them up and put a little bit of maple syrup and also some peanut butter with bananas and blend it up, it'll make like this little chocolate parfait, and you put in your refrigerator, put it in there, and put some cocoa butter in if you want. And it's a very good chocolate snack to satisfy it.
And I think like you said, convenience is the key, because if you don't take the time to prep and you don't prepare foods that are maybe, when you get hungry, you just want to grab something that, really quick and satisfy your hunger. So the roll-ups are a great idea. And I just know my own habits. If I don't have something that's convenient for me, and even years ago when I was a driver, heck yeah, I wanted to go in the truck stop and, sit down at the restaurant, and I was surely going to order something that wasn't good for me.
Well, yeah, that is just, and I know from years ago, my father, I had two brothers still driving today. And when I used to go with my dad, when I was learning to drive and go on there, a lot of that too is they want to go in and they want some interaction with fellow drivers. Right?
Socialization, yep.
You got it. And that's, even though people think that drivers are nomads, but you get them in a conversation, after a while, looking for the door, right? I got to go to work. But in today's world and technology, this has been really something that's come to light here recently, talking to drivers, because they like that going in. I said, but listen, it's fine. Don't deprive yourself of that. But majority of the time, half the time, take that time to have your meal prepared, and then get your phone out or your pad or whatever, and get on FaceTime and talk to the family, right?
Right.
You put the word out that. It's one of the things I'm working on with Freightliner is the communication, where drivers are going to be at a certain place and they want to have someone to play basketball with, or horseshoes or whatever, where they can connect with people. And same like that. They may be sitting truck stop 100 miles down the road, but they're taking their break. They want to talk to somebody, right? Because what people don't really know is that professional drivers really started social media back in the day with CB radios.
Yeah, they did.
Right.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's very frustrating to me. It's bugged me for years that it had to be people like Facebook and all that to come out with that and get the big praise for that. And the drivers, riding with my dad, I can remember that he said, "Oh my gosh, I need to get some tires," and he'd pick up the mic and gotta get tires. And within 5 minutes, he'd have, "Don't go here, go there. If you go there, tell him Joe sent you." Blah blah blah. And I always remember that, Andrew, being in business. That the power of that. And so they really are the ones that first had it going on, before you had all the other media outlets out there now.
Yeah, the original social media channel was Channel 19, wasn't it?
There you go.
That's right.
Breaker.
Hey, you mentioned exercise when we opened the show a little bit. You said 75% seems to be the nutrition and what you put in your mouth, and that means the other 25%'s got to be about movement and stuff. So how much movement do we need as a driver?
There's always been talk about, you got to get in the gym, you got 45 minutes, to an hour, and that's not the case. I mean, 10-minute intervals, if you stop 2 or 3 times during the day, and if you get 10-minute intervals in of what I call walking with intention, and that means, stand up straight, invest in a good pair of shoes. That'll make the big difference. And take off in one direction and go for 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and turn around and come back with intention. And do it in intervals. You walk a little bit to get warmed up, and you walk a little more. And if you want to jump into a slow jog, you can. And then the other is using your truck for a lot of it, or if you have just simple pair of bands that you can get in a Walmart store to do some retention. muscle retention to be able to resistance with the bands to work on your biceps and your shoulders and keep your back straight and those kind of things, and step ups up and off the your steps getting in and out of the truck, just to get some movement. It really always comes down, I tell them, to two things. It's what you put in your mouth and movement. I mean, it's like, I heard Fred talking the other day that on the radio, and he was saying, he said, remember when you take your dog to the vet and they've gained weight, what's the vet say? Cut back on his food and take him for a walk.
Yeah.
So it works.
Well, and you just brought up something there. I think about the number of drivers out there that actually do have a dog with them in the truck. So why not use that as a little bit of motivation? Get the dog out, walk the dog, and it'll do both of you some good.
And thank you you're making it too easy for me. But that's something else I'm working on with, because if you look at the demographics, over 50% of the drivers out there, 60-some%, have animals. And then now that's 60-some%, 40-some%, they travel with them. Right.
Right.
And so I tell them all the time, it's a great companion, but, do it with intention. They just don't want to meander around. I mean, they're an animal. They want to get some exercise. So whether you're out there throwing the frisbee or whatever, but use that as your workout partner. Absolutely. It's great because, I used to, one of the best jobs I had before the pandemic, Andrew, I would go around to various different carriers once a month. They'd have me come in and talk driver health and wellness to the orientation classes, right? And so I would talk to them about, and first thing I do, I say, everybody here that has an animal, raise their hand. Usually 75% would raise their hand, whether you have them with you or if they're at home. And then I'd ask them, how'd that everybody leave their hand up if you make sure that Buddy gets fed every morning? And everybody leaves their hand up. So I said, okay, leave your hand up. Now tell me, how many leave their hand up that you give them a cup of coffee, a cigarette, and a donut? and of course I said, so if it's not good for them, then why do you think it's good for you? Right? So just trying to make an example, but something you said I want to go back to about the preventive and packing their lunches is that one of the things that drivers are very linear thinkers, industrial thinkers, right? They can relate to preventive maintenance on the truck, especially owner operators, where it's up to them to maintain their truck, change the oil, make sure it's right, tires, all those kinds of things, because one, you don't want to have to afford to get broke down the road, get towed in, or that kind of thing. And number two is you want your dollars to go as far as you can, right? And so you make sure your engine oil is changed and all this. So I have a saying telling drivers, I want you to take a peek under your own personal hood. See what's going on, get weighed, do your blood pressure, all those things, and be preventive about it. Don't let it hit you from the blind side. A lot of times, unfortunately, it's too late.
Yeah, great advice for sure. How about, is there any apps out there? I'm thinking of smartphone apps or any direction, maybe websites or something you can give drivers, something you have or something you've come across that you think are a really good place to start?
Yeah, I have been working on this for a couple of years, once again, because I finally woke up one day and I thought, gosh, carriers think nothing of spending thousands of dollars on technology, for better fuel and,
right.
All those things. And so I have an app out called the CDL scanner, health scanner app. And it's a new technology out of Canada. And it's been around for a number of years in Europe. A couple million people utilizing it, and now it's in the US. And so the piece that I developed with them on is that now a driver can take they can buy a code, and it's like $1.25 a month for the code. And they can get this code and it'll send it to them. And it's a one-time download. It's not an app that you got to do a password and all that. It's a web-based. And you can download this application on your phone, and you can take your cell phone and use your camera. And in 30 seconds, you hold it in front of your face. It takes your picture of what it does is reading the blood flow under your skin in your face. And it sends it up in the cloud, and it'll come back down, and it'll give you your blood pressure, heart rate, BMI, and your respiratory reading. And it's all private. It's not facial recognition. It's scanning under your skin, the blood flow, and nothing's saved. Data's not in the cloud. As soon as you do it, it gets erased. But you can have that on your phone. And it's got links in there if you're taking it every so often, and you think, you know what, my blood pressure does seem to be a problem. Maybe I should talk to somebody. It has links in there that you can reach out and talk to some people if you want to get some advice and help. But it's a very private, inexpensive way. Once again, I always try to come up with easy solution ways that drivers can help manage their health, right? Get in front of it and do something about it before it's too late.
That sounds like incredible technology. I didn't know anything like that existed out there.
Oh, yeah, and it's very, so, when we're done, if you I'll get your cell and email, have that, and I'll send you a code and you can take it for a test drive. Everybody gets it. I did it. I had it at Matt's, and I don't know, we scanned 500 drives. I can't remember how many, a bunch. And they all were that this is great. This is easy for them to manage, and it's private, and it's awareness, like everything else we do, right? So it's preventive personal health awareness.
I love that. I'd love to check it out, and it's maybe something I can push out in my own fleet too, as well.
Yeah, and it's so one of the things I'm doing, talking to carriers, and have carriers now, they're, instead of giving them for National Appreciation Week, spending $20 on a hat or T-shirt, you can give them this for almost half the price, and it's something of value that they can utilize. And because we unfortunately we don't spend the few dollars to keep the skilled drivers, and that's what I try to fight. Keeping the men and women that know they want to be a driver in the seat instead of doing the old churn and burn.
Yeah, you hit something there for sure, where you say the companies, we as leaders in the company, sometimes we spend and invest so much money on the business side of things, yet we don't invest enough in our biggest asset, and that's our drivers. Yeah,
and and I know that, because I go to most all the trade shows, and they always have the big sessions, always the same thing. I'm sure you've attended them, your share, Andrew, but it's, recruiting and retention, and retention. Well, I never hear anything about really what the retention really is, and is that really changing the numbers?
Well, we appreciate all your hard work in the industry, and I thank you again for joining us today. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Driven Too Far. Be sure to visit our website at driven2far.com for tons of industry resources.